Hi guys, my name is Amber Alejandro and I'm the YouTube lecturer for this week. My lecture is going to cover one concept from chapter 6, which is critical approaches to organizations and communication, and another concept from chapter 7, identity and difference in organizational life. So these two concepts are what I found most interesting from the two chapter readings that we were assigned. So if you'd like to follow along with me, get out your textbook and we can start by turning to page 164, which is going to be a couple pages after the start of chapter 6. And we're going to be looking at the centrality of power. So it should look something like this. Okay. And I know everything is backwards. I'm really sorry, but bear with me. If you have the page number, just follow along. Okay. So power. Power can be defined as something that a person or a group possesses, and it can be exercised through actions. So in other words, as most of us know, power is a commodity to a lot of people. It's that kind of influence that can be taken, given, lost, and won. And when it's possessed, it can be used to, the littlest to even the extremest extents to get what someone or an organization or a certain type of group wants. So in the field of organizational communication, powers in organizations can function several different ways. According to the textbook here on page 164, there are 5 types of social powers, usually defined with the assumption that person A has power over person B when A has some control over some outcome that B wants. So, kind of to provide an example, if you think about it in real life experiences, person A is your boss and you are person B. And your boss obviously has control over you in terms of the way that your work environment is laid out. And so if he or she controls whether or not you get to work the graveyard shift, and that's your favorite shift and you want to work it all the time, then obviously if you want to work it whenever you get that chance. So hence the fact that person A, your boss, has control over the outcome that you, person B, would want. So using that same example, let's look at the first type of social power, which is going to be reward power. Reward power can be defined as person A having power over person B when A can give an informal or formal reward, like a bonus or an award of some kind, in exchange for B's compliance. So if you think about that example, if person A, your boss, puts you on the schedule all week to work the graveyard, because the week before that you had agreed to work the morning shift, which you hate, but and he or she knows that, but you worked it anyway because your boss needed you to, then obviously person B, you get rewarded and you get to work the graveyard shift the whole rest of the week because you were compliant, because your boss was so grateful for what you did, and in exchange he extended that power to reward you for your good behavior. But I know essentially that power isn't something that's always used for good, so this is a very extreme example. Reward power is not something that's very common, but we see a lot of power plays being exploited in all types of companies nowadays, and there has to be more to it, and which is actually what the rest of the approaches to the critical theory of organization kind of talks about, but I couldn't really get into all of that. So we're just going to move on to the next concept, and it's going to be in chapter 7. So if you're doing what I'm doing right now, we're turning to chapter 7, and we're going to go to page 200, and that's going to bring us to our second concept, which is going to be identity regulation and identity work. This concept, identity regulation, really, it's very simply can be defined as the way in which organizations regulate and control the members of their organization by creating or making an identity to fit a type of organizational position. So according to the textbook, there are nine different ways. So if you can see from page 200 to 201, there's about 9 different ways that an organization can regulate their members' identity. And if we can just start going by down to number 1, you can see defining a person directly is one of the ways that you can regulate identity. And defining a person directly can be basically giving members of an organization certain positional names to define who they are in the company. So the example here says mid-level managers and senior level managers. Another example could be like supervisors, general managers, district managers. They're all defined differently because they hold different authority, and a lot of them have different responsibilities that's pretty much tethered to the type of managerial position that they hold in the company. Then we're going back down to the list, and we're going to look at number 5 here on page 200, and you're looking at providing specific knowledge and skills. That's another way you can regulate identity. This specific way talks about how members of an organization hold specific knowledge or a specific set of skills that are focused on a specific aspect of the company. So say like you hold a law degree and you specialize in handling the legal claims of the company, or you hold a medical degree and you handle workplace emergencies, maybe in a mining company, or somewhere out at sea. I think they're called the oil rigs, might be one of those. So for those skills and the knowledge specific to that certain aspect of a company can alone regulate the identity that you hold in that company, and as you as a member can already kind of regulate the identity that you're already holding on to, as well as make it easier on your organization to basically position you to fit a certain spot. So moving on to the next, to the other half of this first approach to identity and difference, we're going to be looking at identity work. So identity work can be defined as a process in which members of an organization actively respond to the organizational positioning, or as you can say, identity regulation, by forming, maintaining, strengthening, revising, or resisting the identity for which they are defined. So you can see how these two things go hand in hand. You get an identity, it gets regulated by your company, and then you have to put it to work. So this is basically what identity work is. So according to the textbook, there are 7 different ways, or they call it images here in the textbook, that members of an organization use when responding to the organization's effort to regulate their identities. You'll see within the next couple pages from 201 to 210 really in-depth description of the 7 different ways, but for the sake of this lecture, I'm just going to go really quick, and we're going to go to page 202, which has actually a nice little table, which is table 7.1, that's going to summarize all 7 of those images to make it a little bit easier. And we'll just look at some quick examples of here. So we're going to look at the first one, self-doubter. If you look at self-doubter on the table, you'll see that the key characteristics of this identity is trying to cope with insecurity and uncertainty on the job. So as the textbook describes, the regulation of one's identity in an organization is no longer kind of assigned to members based on their rank or their position, which I know is kind of ironic, because earlier I was saying that there are certain ways to regulate behavior, but not always do companies, not always do they assign you a certain member based on, your mid-level rank or your senior level rank. Sometimes there are certain organizations that rank you or position you based on your ability to achieve this particular image that they're looking for. And so as a self-doubter, you're kind of constantly feeling pressured about your identity and your performance and your job, because you're that employee who, more often than not, you're kind of always competing with your fellow coworkers, and you're striving to be better, and you're kind of conforming to the expectations of what the company wants in the hopes that you're exactly what they want. But, as a self-doubter, your drive to continue performing at work actually makes it harder for you it actually makes it easier for you to continue being insecure and continue to being uncertain about what to expect from the organization, because you're constantly coping with insecure feelings and wondering why you're so, you don't know what to expect. And that's kind of one of the ways that, you hold on to this image of a self-doubter, because you kind of doubt your ability to do good in the company because you're always wondering what's going to come next. So that's just one example. There's a bunch more, but I'm looking at the time right now and I'm about to hit 10 minutes. So I just want to say, thank you guys for listening to my lectures. I'll be posting questions for us to start our discussion, and hopefully we can get to talking for the next couple days throughout the week. So thank you. Have a good night.